Welcome to the HR Uprising podcast. This podcast series explores HR hot topics and challenges through conversations with relevant experts and real-life HR, learning, and OD professionals. The HR Uprising is about learning through collaboration and evidence-based action. We want colleagues to have the confidence and skills to rise up through their organizations by delivering real, lasting business value. Now, introducing your host, chartered psychologist, experienced change agent, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach, Lucinda.
Hello and welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda, and I've got a guest that I'm really delighted to have on this week, Andy Salkeld. Now, this is a special guest to me because, as many of you know, I recently launched my book, thank you so much for your support, How to be a Change Superhero. And coincidentally, or I don't know whether it is coincidentally, the way in which I know this guest is that we were both on the same book writing course. We went on a book writing boot camp with a lady called Alison Jones of Practical Inspiration Publishing. And we both went through the journey of writing our books. I have to say, Andy absolutely slam dunked it in terms of he was often setting the pace in terms of this, but he's obviously written a very, very different book to the one that I've written, and one I think that you guys would be really interested in. So Andy is the author of Life is a Four-Letter Word, and I'll let him expand on that in a moment, but it's really powerful and it's a very personal insight into mental health and mental wellness, and not so much mental healthness. I've created a new word there, Andy. I think what we want to explore today really is a little bit of his very personal journey, and then how we can translate it for the audience of the HR Uprising podcast. So I hope it's going to be something that's pretty powerful and pretty useful. So Andy, I'll let you introduce yourself more fully.
Thank you for having me on. So my name is Andrew Salkeld. I am a chartered accountant and member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. I trained at PwC. I'm a specialist in corporate finance, then moved into industry and focused on business intelligence. And following a number of positions, I'm now an investor, director, and co-owner. It's a small tech company based in Leeds. Sounds like I've kind of got it all figured out, doesn't it? Sounds like I've got it sorted, know what's going on. But I always say life is one of two halves. So here's the other half. My name is Andy. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with depression. 3 years ago, I almost took my own life. A little over a year ago, I finally accepted what happened and told the world. And since then, I have been sharing my story across the UK and worldwide over 50 times now. I still struggle to this day, but I do what I do to help other people make it through their lives and hope that they can avoid some of the issues that went on in mine. I live in Leeds. I live with my little black kitten, Pika. I enjoy board games, card games, cooking, and music. And which one of those is more honest? Which one of those is more connectable? And why is it that we always introduce ourselves as what we do, not who we really are?
And that's the key and the crux of it, really, Andy, isn't it? So you had what many of my listeners might be in, large corporate organisations in HR roles, looking at people like you, and you were high flying, or you were performing in a way that's jumping through the hoops appropriately, seemed to be perfectly okay, I guess. So where's the dichotomy, or what was the cause of the challenges, I suppose, and also continue with your personal story, but I think ultimately it would be great if HR would be able to, how could we change things to avoid some of what you went through?
So what I've realised now through looking back, and everyone knows hindsight is 2020 and often rose tinted and so on, but I've probably lived with depression most of my life, from when I started my career all the way through to now. And I never felt comfortable sharing what I was going through. I never, it's not very accountant of you, is it? It's not very manly of of you is it? Admitting weakness, admitting failure, and so on. And what happened through various things, like in the book, I talk about workplace bullying and stuff like that, and how it's kind of been rebranded as just as we rebrand ourselves. It's been rebranded as banter and it's acceptable and so on, but really it isn't. And we need to be far more aware of what's being said and what's being felt by people within organizations. But so I hid it. And I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us hide our true personalities. Like there were things I enjoyed and I gave up on them to be more accountant, to be more corporate, and to fit in because particularly in the professions, everything's competitive. You're hired in year groups of, say, 50 people across the UK, and and your promotion prospects are like, it's Darwinian, it's survival of the fittest. If you don't meet the criteria, you can lose your job. And even then, if you do meet your criteria, then you are pitted against everyone else of your grade for the promotion and so on. And therefore, you can't stand out a lot. You have to stand out in the ways the business wants you to stand out, not necessarily in the ways that you want to stand out. And that obviously that leads to a bit of an internal dichotomy where where you're kind of like, but this is what I care about, but this is what my career and this is what my work cares about. So all this was going on. And then like the trigger point in my story, and I do say this, it like I was managing things. I am medicated. I speak to a therapist every week. And like I was looking after myself. And what happened was I was at what I thought was rock bottom. Like my life was stale. My career was stagnant. My friends and family were busy with their own lives and families, etc. And just at that point, when I thought I was at rock bottom, my wife left me. And then I found there was way more to fall. And that pushed me into a position of being suicidal. And I've come back from it. I talk about how I've been suicidal at 3 points in my life, and I have. That there was that point. There was another point slightly later on. And then there was actually a point just after I'd finished writing the first draft of Life is a Four-Letter Word. Because, and I mention it at the beginning of chapter 7, because it was at that point that my divorce finalized. And I'd always told myself that up until that point, I'd make it to there to protect my family and everyone around me from kind of what could fall out in a messy situation.
On that then, Andy, just taking that point a little bit, because I knew you in inverted commas there. We only knew each other virtually, didn't we? You've met, since I'm talked here. So you're almost, I suppose I'm visualizing you kind of slightly just going downstairs or going down a bit of a cliff face. And you'd thought you were almost, at rock bottom. But then there was further to fall, which you were unaware of until it got worse. But from the point of view of going down that cliff face, if we look back on it, is there anything that you could have done to slow the descent, or the organisation could have done?
So where I was at the time, I was self-employed, so I didn't have an organisation around me, which is probably I think I probably would have felt better within an organization, because when you're self-employed, there's a lot of self-motivation. And when you're in this emotional state, you lose motivation. Like I describe it as kind of a heavy consuming numbness. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't just take away the happy. A lot of people think depression just makes you sad. No, it strips that away too. And it just leaves you empty of emotion and so on, and just exhausted. And here's one of the sad things that I say to people is when people are struggling, when someone's genuinely struggling, the really sad bit is until that person is ready to be helped and wants to be helped, you can't do much. All you can do really is be there and give them the opportunities to seek help. So check in with them, treat them as if there's nothing wrong. Do you want to come out? Do you want to do this? Like, it'd be nice to see you. How are the this, that, and the other? Because what happens is at some point that person will turn around. That person will turn around and go, I'm ready for help now. And if there's no one there, if other people have gone, well, it's a bit hard to, like, I'm going to keep my distance, let them get through their problems and so on. It's at that point that we can lose people.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of what I say and a lot of what is relevant for kind of businesses and like, I detach businesses from this because I believe we're just all people. We're like, people matter and so on. And people are just people within a business and so on. But it's at that point when they turn around, what we need to do is just enable them to feel they can turn around, enable them to feel that we are there for them. And it's about making them feel those conversations are comfortable, which is why when I started what I do in talking about mental health in my talk called Breaking the Stigma, and it's why I do the double introduction at the beginning, is because actually here's all the personal stuff, but I'm still that successful accountant, finance director and everything as well. But you would never know about this bit. And by breaking the stigma attached to mental health in the workplace, these conversations can happen and people can feel more comfortable around them and so on. And that's the bit that I want to help people with, to feel that they can do that and that there shouldn't be fear and so on.
Mm. And actually, possibly an upside of this coronavirus enforced homeworking, I would observe that the managers who have done a good job, or the businesses that are doing a good job. I like your point about people are just people within a business, but often it did feel quite sterile. And whereas now I do feel that the people who are getting on well are where they have put the people conversations first, maybe because there hasn't been that face-to-face contact. So we've had to work harder to keep the sort of human piece going, and because there are very obvious stresses on everybody by these changing circumstance. So this almost creates a window of time that we can either go back to the bad old days where you didn't really talk about this and there was a stigma, or we could carry on down this route, putting the person first and say, how are you today? And then they say, actually, how are you? And actually being prepared to listen to the answer.
Yeah, so here's the most surreal thing that has happened, and it only happened last night. A couple of weeks ago, a month ago or so, around the time the book launched, I was doing some interviews for a recruitment company based in Manchester and London, I believe, called We Are Adam. And last night, I was scrolling through Twitter, as you do, and I saw my name, and I was like, oh, it's probably just a targeted ad. And then I looked at it and I was like, no, this is someone quoting me in their kind of strategy of how they come back from coronavirus and everything that's going on, saying, quoting things I'd said in these interviews. And I was like,
fantastic.
This is weird. In what sort of world am I a quotable source? And so on. And it's exactly that. They were saying things like, we don't want to rush back to where we were. We want to take what we've gained and move forward from here. And in the interview, in the interview I gave with them, I as with a lot of what I say in my book and stuff, I quoted pop culture, and I quoted Thanos from Avengers Endgame, where he says something at the end, and it really rung true to me, where he says, as long as there are those that remember what was, there will always be those who cannot accept what can be. And I see this as a cautionary tale for what's going on with COVID, because there will be people who want to rush back to the old normal, who want to rush back and be like, well, we've dropped our revenues, our e-PDR has gone through the floor, blah, blah, blah. We need to push harder, do this, work longer hours, yada, yada, yada. And they're going to rush back. But those people are missing the opportunity to actually build a healthier, more sustainable, more caring, and more personal future. And right now, all of us, businesses, people, everyone, has been given this amazing pause for thought where we can actually think, you know what, this is what I want my future to look like. This is what I want the future of my organization to look like. So I'm going to rebuild it that way. And it was just so surreal seeing people quote me saying things like this. But it's so true. Like, how often does a time like this happen in a lifetime?
You could be pushing and educating people, and again, we'll go and talk about sorts of things. You could be coming in and doing a speaker slot, and it makes very little difference. But actually now, people might hear it in a different way, and there's a real opportunity to just make a game change out of it, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the reality, and also, I mean, from the people who'd be listening to this podcast would be sort of preaching to the choir here. There's people know that actually, mental illness is there. The cost is there in businesses pre-COVID. So sweeping it under the carpet and going back to the old normal isn't actually going to be helpful. What we're talking about here is building something that's better and more sustainable, as you said earlier. But you know the whole thing about the stigma. What are people scared? So are people scared about asking about mental illness? Why do you think they don't feel comfortable?
So here's the way I see it. In professional practice, you are recruited in kind of a peer group. Your year group, you're maybe within a few years of each other, a couple of outliers, etc., and you're all doing your professional qualifications. Like this is my experience as an accountant. And what happens is it's a pressure cooker of competition. So people are, if you fail 2 exams? It's probably changed. You're sacked, you lose your job, and you potentially have to pay back the cost of those exams. And you slowly make it through your exams and so on. And then at the end, you're put into kind of not year groups, but grades within an organization. And then each year, when it's promotion time, you are rated openly against everyone that in your year group, in your peer group, for promotion prospects. So you want to stand out, but you want to stand out on their terms. And the fear, the genuine fear is, if I said to someone that I was stressed, if I lived with depression, if I was suicidal, would I be given the same fair treatment as everyone else?
Would it count against you?
But would it count against you?
Yeah.
And we would love to say, no, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. But it's quelling that fear and that stigma there that's limiting. And what I try and do when I go in and speak to organizations is I very much say, well, look, here's my story. Look at what I've achieved with all this. And what we need to do is we need to find a way and to help people. And I've had that. This is actual matter of fact what happened. I went into an organization, a large legal firm, and the day after I gave my talk, Breaking the Stigma, the partner who invited me in told me that one of her team members came into her office and said, I'm about 3 steps behind Andy and I need help.
Wow.
And now that person is getting help and is thriving in that organization because they were willing to take the risk and the chance to kind of speak out and say, look, I can do this job, but it is killing me, and so on. And
so on that message then, so what was different about that environment from the one that you were in? Was it your perception, or is it definitely something different about the environment?
I believe it was perception. I like when I was there, I never felt I could do this, and like whether it was correct or wasn't doesn't matter. It was the fact that I felt that.
Okay.
And like the link, because I see this as, like, I've been doing some research on this, and I see this as kind of a cyclical problem because I felt uncomfortable talking about it. So when the HR teams, the leadership and so on were kind of assessing budgets for how to help their staff, that they were seeing, okay, well, no one's complaining about their mental health. All the surveys are kind of saying that everyone's all right and so on, and things like that. So, but we know there is a problem here. We know we need to care for our employees, but we can't we can't tailor a package to someone because we don't know there's a problem. So we'll do what we think to treat the symptoms. So we'll try to de-stress people by, like, I always joke about how most places just say, do some yoga. And yoga is good, don't get me wrong, but there are fundamental problems that we can come on to later. Or they get in like a little motivational speaker like me and so on that does this and helps encourage people. But it doesn't address the kind of core problems. And these white label solutions, as I call them, kind of people go, well, you're not, the employees see them and go, well, you're not really addressing the real problems, which are that there's not enough of us. You need to hire more people. We're not paid enough for the amount of hours we work, and we're working too long. And none of that is healthy for us. But you're not addressing those problems. So why on earth would we engage with you when you don't understand what the real problem is, and so on? And then they're even less inclined to say that there's a problem because they don't feel they're being listened to, and that the management are detached and so on. So and the cycle continues. Management goes, well, no one's talking about it. Everyone's middle of the road, so we'll just keep doing the same thing.
So it's almost like a trust piece there, as whether or not they feel there's a high level of trust in the organisation for them to work different hours or to solve their own problems, maybe, in terms of this. I mean, from the organisation's point of view, though, pulling back, Andy, because you did say there that possibly it was your perception, right, back in the thing where it was, so you perceived it as exceptionally competitive, although it did sound, if people did lose their jobs at the end of it, you can see why you'd feel that pressure.
Oh, yeah.
So the businesses are going... There's two things here. There's maybe a dichotomy, so maybe you can just help me as be practical here. So you're saying you've got these white label solutions, including someone like yourself going in and speaking, yet you've also given me an example of you going in and speaking, potentially saving someone's life, maybe over-dramatizing, in a real example there. So what's the right answer? Or there probably isn't one, but what to take?
We're left in this position where someone needs to jump first. So either the employees need to stand up and say, you know what, I need help, and I'm looking to you, my organization, my leadership team, whoever, to help me.
Right.
And that's the case where I talked about the person within the legal firm said, I need help, and that person got help.
Because the person was receptive then, the manager in question who they spoke to was receptive. Now, whether it's because they were the person who booked it, where they were enlightened, or they weren't scared by mental health?
Here's the other thing. Every leadership team I've spoken to, every management team I've spoken to, every partner in an organization says, we care about our people and we will give them whatever they need because they are, and this is true, the people are the most valuable asset, I hate that word, in the business, but it's true. And retraining someone often costs more than the cost of kind of helping them. But businesses, and this is the key, businesses make data-driven decisions. And if they don't have the data, they can't act appropriately. And this person, or in my case, me, we broke suit. We said, I need the help, and then got the help. The way we address this overall is we need to kind of treat this we need to offer solutions for individuals who do raise their hand. So say, look, we care about our people. If you come to us, we will help you with a therapist, a coach, a this, a that. We will create a tailored package based on you as an individual to help you through what you're going through. And then it's offered to everyone. And I know that suddenly people go, but the cost of that will be incredible. But actually, the people that need it will get so much from it that it will be, and there will be people that don't need it, and so on. Mm. But it's all about balancing around the individual and making. if the individual feels comfortable enough to have the conversation to say, you know what, this is tough. I can't do this by myself. I need your help in the company, because remember, we spend pretty much a third of our lives at work and stuff, and that's being generous. Like it's probably closer to half our lives at work, give or take.
Especially with travel.
Yeah,
back to way.
And so on. It's very much we need the help within work, and it is a trust piece. It's about knowing that, you know what, regardless of what follows, I like where I work. And what I say to a lot of people, because since the book came out, I've had people like contact me on the back of the book and just say things like, how do I break the stigma in work? I wrote a piece for the Taxation magazine. It was a huge article where they said, how do we break the stigma in work? And I said, you ignore it. Because ultimately, if there is a stigma and you say something and they treat it badly, do you really want to work at that organization in general? So if you say, I'm having a problem, and they say, all right, deal with it. Is that somewhere you really want to be engaged with? You'd much rather work, or I at least would much rather work somewhere that cared about me as a person, and so on. And I mean, this comes on to one of the things that we talked about before this, is finding your purpose, finding what brings you enjoyment, and so on. Because I know that it's that engagement with people and with the leadership teams that engages me. And if an organization says to me, we will support you in your struggles, we will help you, then that's somewhere I care about. That's somewhere I want to, and like that's real employee engagement there.
Absolutely. So, because I want to go on to that, because I really like, we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, to find a good fit, but let's just try and pull this bit together, because there's so many strands to it. So in terms of what businesses can do, really you're saying, you're not saying don't do white label solutions. Obviously you're available to speak, and that makes difference. But what you're saying is don't just do white label solutions. Do white label solutions with integrity. That's not the fix. You have to have a holistic solution, and make sure that once you have that speaker or whatever it is that maybe takes the lid off, that you've got people who are prepared. I mean, I hear about mental health first aiders or senior managers who are approachable, people who are not fearful, because I do think some people are scared of emotion. They have to be maybe supported to deal with it, that you can go and talk to, and then get a personalized solution. And so that's the key for you. So it's a holistic solution of which we're all part of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of the most eye-opening things that I do with kind of leadership teams when I've spoken to them is I say, right, I'm one of your staff, and I come in and I say, I'm suicidal. What do you do? And for the best part of a year, when I was doing this with like various heads of department and everything like that, most of them were things like, I don't know how to respond to that. Send them to HR.
Yeah, that's about right, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was like, right, you've just lost someone.
Respond like a human being, isn't it, really?
Exactly. It's empathize, talk to the person, engage with the person. If they are at that stage, they are like, you may not be the person that can talk them down off the ledge, but you may be the person that can show them that humanity is worthwhile, and so on. And if your immediate reaction is, I'm going to keep on my shining emotionless armor that I wear into every negotiation, it ain't going to work.
Yeah. The whole empathy thing, that's so important. That comes over in your book as well. I mean, a couple of very poignant episodes, you're quite literally prevented from killing yourself by the fact that your friend phoned up, and you're saying a lot of the time people who are helping, I suppose in the same way as people who are part of the problem, they may not realize. So just by being human, you can help.
You have no idea how the smallest of interactions can change a life. And this is speaking from someone who now knowingly knows he has saved lives. You have no idea that the smallest of things can matter so much. And in my case, it was a stupid little text message that just said something along the lines of pub. And that was all it took. And it still took me like a year plus to actually tell my best friend that saved my life that day, and so on, because I was so ashamed of it. And yeah,
the stigma sitting with you though there, a lot of it, isn't it? That's the interesting thing. A lot of it, it's put on ourselves, the shame, the embarrassment, the stigma, for whatever reason. So actually, again, sort of standing up and being brave to speak up.
There are two things like that. Again, I cover this in the book. Shame and regret can only be felt by the individual. What we say things like, "Oh, I feel sorry for them," but that you don't feel the same shame that person is feeling, or the same regrets that person is feeling. It's very personal, and yes, there is an element of it being attached to the individual and so on, and that's why I talk about being a person and helping that person be able to be themselves without regrets, without shame. Because then they can be their most honest and authentic self throughout. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, just because I want to move on to the thing about, again, fitting it into our audience. There's so much we can do for people. We said we have a holistic but individualized approach. We need to keep our managers being empathic and giving them maybe the support and confidence to respond appropriately to things. One thing I just wanted, I wrote it down here when we were talking earlier, and it resonated, I suppose, actually maybe with this whole race thing going on at the moment, but the just general low level thing. You talked about workplace bullying, banter, low level. I've had another person who talked about unconscious bias, just sort of low level things that can take away at people. Is that an organisational thing? Is that the individual thing? What do you think we should do about that? Because I feel for people in HR, actually, this is something about our culture that may need addressing sometimes.
So people like engaging, and that you just as you will never know how big an impact something you say can have on something, you will never know how detrimental or positive the impact you can have.
Yes.
On
flip side.
The impact. Yeah, the flip side of it. So one of the key things that always stands out to me is when someone comes in late to work, and you just go, "All right, slacker, how's it going? What time do you call this?" But you haven't checked what's gone on at their house that might have caused them to be late, or the fact that something problematic might have happened, or anything like that. And how I engage with just a really simple comment like that, that's not meant to be offensive, is kind of like, "Oh, well, work is more important than what's going on at my home, or whatever caused this. So I guess I just need to put work first ahead of these bigger problems." And what that leads to is people going, "Oh, well, I can't share my personal journey," because what they care about is the fact that I wasn't here working on time, and so on.
This is, again, an opportunity to switch that, isn't it? Because that is, again, the whole trust thing about you've got to be present and visible to actually be productive, whereas
you don't.
No, and quite the reverse can sometimes be the truth.
And that, like, obviously that side of banter is kind of like, there's lots of things people banter about, but the most important thing is just care about the people. Like, if someone is saying something that you are uncomfortable with, just say to them, "Look, you know that's uncomfortable. I'm not happy with that," or just be like, "Hey, can you stop?" Or anything like that, because
the term's microaggressions, isn't it? And I think it's not just in that scenario. It's also now, and it's not something else. It's about age, it's about race, it's about sexual preference. It's and it's about timekeeping. It's actually just being aware of these things which are said in humour, which might be a culture, but may well be detrimental to someone's mental health.
Yeah, and that it's the bit of. It's just being considerate. It's just being, you know what, that's a person, and if if all they experience throughout a day is people pulling apart parts of their personality, then eventually they could end up where I did, where they just said, well, you know what, I'm just not going to have those parts of my personality. Yeah. And look where that almost got me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think there were some quite interesting points we've covered there, in terms of, I've come with that, and that whole sort of microaggressions, what we do as individuals and as organisations culturally to try and address this. I suppose closing on a kind of positive engagement note, you introduced me to a new word, didn't you? Which ikigai. Ikigai.
Yes.
So do you want to explain that? Because it's quite a nice way of us pulling this together as what we can do.
So the ikigai it's a Japanese concept of purpose, and it's a wonderful Venn diagram, and I love maths. And it's the intersection of four things, and if you can find these four things in what you do, or in anything, then you have found a purpose. So, and the four things are really simple. It's, can you be paid for it? Okay, that's fine. That's a vocation. Can I get paid for whatever I'm doing? Does the world need it? And specifically, and this is something people get, does the world need my version of it? Because you can get lots of different versions of things, but do they need my version? Are you any good at it? Because if you're not any good at it, then are people going to pay for it? And does the world need your version of it? And then the final one, this is the one that I always find the most important, is, do you enjoy it? Do you love it? And if you can find something that meets those four criteria, then it's that whole age-old kind of thing that then you will do it day in, day out, every day for the rest of your life, never needing a holiday, never needing a break, and it will feel like you're not working at all. To which, when I was kind of introduced to this the first time, someone next to me just goes, "We can't all be porn stars," but it's true. And the places people get stuck in finding their ikigai and finding their individual purpose are either it's the can you get paid for it part. So what this is, the world needs it and loves it. You're good at it and you love it. That's a hobby. That's a hobby. But people struggle to do the whole, well, can I monetize it? And so on. And what people fear is if they try to monetize, if they try to make money from it, that they lose their hobby. No, you don't. You've still got a hobby. You just tried. And that's fine. But if you could turn something you love doing, so say if it's like writing and playing music, or I've written murder mysteries for dinner parties and stuff like that. And people always say, have you ever tried selling these? And so on. And it's just that whole, like, if you try and succeed, you have found something that is worth so much. And if you try and fail, you still just have a hobby.
Yes.
And the other one where people fall down is do you love it? Do you enjoy what you do? And this is where a lot of people end up in kind of their mid to late career, where they're like, look, I'm getting paid for it. I'm good at it. The world needs it. But there's bits that I just don't love, like whether it's the admin or the process or anything like that. They don't quite love it, and they're not willing to risk the security to try and turn it into just what they love, and so on.
Yeah.
And what I would urge everyone to do in this is have a look at what you're doing in your lives, whether it's early career, starting out, or mid-career, late career. Look at it and just be like, hey, do I love doing this? Because if I don't, maybe I should just try and find something that I do love doing and can meet all the other things instead. And how I finish the chapter in the book is I say, look, I've been an accountant for the best part of my life, and I don't love it. I do not love the detail and kind of digging around in numbers and everything like that. I'm bigger picture than that. But what I do love, what I found, and what I'm now getting paid for, and the world needs it, and so on, everything that fits these criteria is I'm helping people. I am changing lives. I am educating them on the pitfalls of mental health and everything like that. And writing books, giving talks. This is my ikigai. I have found it. And now I just need to keep it and embrace it and make it as good as it can be, because whatever I'm doing in this field, whether it's writing another book or doing a podcast like this, I am just smiling constantly because I just enjoy it so much and I can see the difference it's making.
I think you can hear people smile on a podcast, because I can see you smiling, and I think it is fantastic that out of this, very sad stories, like certain parts that you've managed to find your ikigai. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and this is one of the things I always say to people, because they always talk about kind of, is it cathartic and stuff like that. And there was always going to be pain in what happened with my divorce and everything. There's always pain in a breakup. It always happens. But actually, both of us, both me and my ex-wife, who I am still friends with, we are so much more ourselves now and so much more comfortable and happier in who we are, not who we should be, and so on. And again, I will finish on another quote from Avengers Endgame, where Frigga, Thor's mum, says, "Everyone fails at who they should be. The measure of a person is how they succeed at who they really are." And that's how I'm measuring myself.
I think that's great. And maybe a measure of a great organisation, or measure of great HR team, people who can help people to find who they are, and if possible, find a place in the organisation that helps them do what they're best at. It's not, you can't do it all of the time, and sometimes it's right for people to leave, but I think if we can try and focus that whole piece there, it makes a big difference if people are in square pegs and square holes, etc., as much as possible.
Massively. Like there is huge complexity of people changing roles, pivoting from one department to another, and finding the right thing for them. The key thing in that, particularly from an HR perspective, is understanding the motivations of people that want to do it. Because if someone has found their ikigai and knows without a shadow of a doubt this is what their purpose is, and that you can see it, because when someone's found their purpose, you can see it in them. That is where you can genuinely help people become their best self.
Yes. And
they will, if you help them find their ikigai, their purpose, they will be so engaged with the organization, it's untrue. Just on employee engagement, particularly for the listeners out there, I wrote a blog post for the HR Director, the monthly magazine, called Follow. No, it wasn't Follow the Leader. It's What's Love Got to Do with It, which is about employee engagement, and it covers about how to engage with employees really. And what I say in it, and I would urge this for any HR professional, is treat it like an actual engagement, to love and to cherish, to have and to hold and all that. But the rest is true. In sickness and in health, we've had the health for years. We're living in the sickness time right now. And this is where employee engagement is tested. Because when all this ends, when a new normal is established, there will be a second fallout to this, where the people who haven't been supported, haven't been held up, and haven't been pulled up by their organizations through a global pandemic and everything that's gone with it, those people will be left feeling, I don't really want to work here anymore, because they didn't look after me then, and all they want is me to help them go back to a healthier place in the future. That's not an engagement.
Yeah, healthier for the business, not necessarily.
Yeah, that isn't love. So if you want to really bring your employees in, is get them involved now. Show them employee engagement now.
Make it sincere. for real,
Exactly.
right? It's not lip service. Andy, I think we'll have to leave it there, but we'll put the links in the show notes as we always do, but I'll put the links, if you can send me that HR director article. That sounds like a good one to look at, and any other aspects. And if people want to get hold of you, to reach out to you, maybe as a speaker, or find out more, connect with you, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
So the best way I'm on all social media channels as Andy_Salkeld. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything like that. Best way to find out about me is on my website, andysalkeld.com. And you can find everything about my keynote speech, Breaking the Stigma. There's even a full version of it that I had recorded. And so people who want to book me can actually watch how I present it live, because the message is so important. I don't want anything hidden behind a paywall. You might as well see it, because if you think it's worthwhile, then it probably is, and so on. But yeah, check out my website. Obviously, Life is a 4-letter word is available on Amazon and in all good bookstores. So please,
which are open as of this week, but
I
maybe
know,
a couple of weeks ago when this goes out, unless we have a second lockdown. So we're going to see if the books are in the store, won't we?
Well, this is my second task for the day, is a wander into town to see if I can find Life is a 4-letter word in the wild.
Do you know what? I'm going to go do the same for mine. We'll have to tweet pictures to each other.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can find me anywhere. You can. I've got a contact form on the website, but equally just email me via LinkedIn or anything like that. I always, there is no organization behind me. Everything you get is me personally. So I will respond to everyone. It's just a matter of how inundated I am at a time.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I hope you are inundated in a positive way, Andy, because I think it's got a great story to share with everybody. And thank you so much for being part of the HR Uprising podcast.
And thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast. You can access more information, including resources or links mentioned in the show, at our website, www.hruprising.com. Also, you might want to join our LinkedIn community or tweet to us at HR Uprising. We'd love to hear from you.